Warner Bros. Can't seem to catch a break. Whether it's their unforgettably poor attempts at creating a DC cinematic universe, or their head-scratching decisions in their gaming division, it seems that they can't do anything right. So what if there were a surefire way of making money? A place where you're almost certain to turn a profit. Some place where instead of investing hundreds of millions of dollars into creating a video game from scratch, you could just hand over the rights to some of your media properties and watch the cash roll in. Well, it turns out that place is Fortnite. This is the story of how all roads lead to Fortnite, and how it almost didn't happen for Warner Bros. In Chapter 2 of Fortnite, DC fans were eating good. We got Dark Knight Batman, Batman Zero, Wonder Woman, Joker, Catwoman, Superman, Harley Quinn, Starfire, the Batman Who Laughs, and many more. Warner Bros., who own the rights to DC characters, seemingly had a great relationship with Fortnite and Epic. But after this, the last DC character we got was Black Adam in 2022, and then for some reason, nothing. So what happened? Well, the date is May 16th, 2022. Warner Bros. Games has just released a cinematic trailer for their upcoming game, Multiversus. It's a platform fighter with all the star power to rival Smash Bros. That only a company like Warner Bros. Could attempt. Characters like Batman, Bugs Bunny, Superman, Shaggy, Finn and Jake. It was truly a solid lineup of characters. As the beta releases a few months later, players can finally get their hands on the game, and it's actually not bad. Solid movesets, decent movement, and an interesting art style created high hopes. At its peak, 150,000 people gave the beta a shot. With all this hype around the game, surely they couldn't fumble it that bad, right? They kept the beta going for an entire year, and within that time we got LeBron James. It was quite a time to be a gamer. But sorry everyone, I know that you're having fun with the beta, but it's time for us to take it offline for the full release. Oh, and when is that? More than a year later. Okay, well, we've waited long enough, and we know that they needed to take our feedback and make improvements to polish the game. The wait is over, and it's finally time to play the full game. I can't wait to see all the changes and improvements. So that's it. Only a year after the game fully releases, it gets shut down. So what went wrong? Well, the game was free to play, which meant that their monetization model was microtransactions. Now, this is nothing new for modern games, but they just did it all wrong. Locking characters behind paywalls in a game where the whole point is having a wide variety of options for players to try out is just bad decision making. For a free-to-play game, a fundamental truth is that core gameplay mechanics should be free for all players, and for some reason they didn't think this applied to characters in a platform fighter. Another huge problem was the game felt totally different from the beta, which was generally well received among players. It went from fast-paced action to a slow-moving mess. It also didn't help that they treated the open beta as almost a partial release that players had access to for a year. So once it went offline, the loyal players who stuck around had to wait an entire year for the release, which was overall a worse product. After this tremendous defeat and their other attempts at creating games didn't go so well, Warner Bros. Knew they needed a new direction for their IPs in video games. As reported by my favorite leaker and Twitter legend, Sheena BR, Warner Bros. Had decided that it was time for them to double down on collaborations with other games. And you know which game loves collaborations? Even before the game was announced to be shutting down, the floodgates were opened for all things Warner Bros. We got Ninja Knight Batman and Karuta Harley Quinn, along with Sub-Zero in the Battle Pass and more Mortal Kombat skins and in-game items and POIs, Mortal Kombat being owned by Warner Bros. And finally now, Adventure Time, also owned by Cartoon Network, which is owned by Warner Bros. It was also reported by Sheena that the reason for the lack of collaborations from DC and Warner Bros. Was because of the release of Multiverses, which is confusing because, like, they aren't even competitors? I mean, what would have happened if Multiverses was a smash hit? Would we have just never gotten Finn and Jake or any other new Warner Bros. Characters? Anyways, the point of this video is that with the current landscape of gaming being a forever race to the bottom, with a heavy emphasis on profit instead of game longevity, it's difficult for players to get invested into a game if they're not sure if it'll be around in a year if the developers decide it doesn't make enough money. I think Moist Critical says it best in his video on Multiversus.
It doesn't make sense to keep paying the developers for Multiversus and to keep building Multiversus if the players aren't spending enough money in the game, but players aren't spending enough money in these games because the uncertainty of the game's lifespan is always called into question.
It has become this paradoxical tug of war between developers and players, with neither side winning. But a game that seems to never have this problem is Fortnite. I mean, it's not without its problems, but if I were an executive in the gaming division of Warner Bros. And I knew that we were bleeding money, and I saw how successful other companies like Disney and Marvel have integrated their IPs into Fortnite, and how much money they might be making, it would seem like the natural next step. I absolutely love the feudal-inspired outfits in Batman and Harley Quinn, along with the introduction of Finn and Jake, but it sort of reminds me of that Thanos scene from Endgame.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
The point is that Fortnite is a necessary evil in the gaming world. Well, not to say that they're totally evil in the true sense, more of a necessary neutral. Whether any IP likes it or not, it's hard to ignore the potential that collaborating with Fortnite could have. If we want a good example of a company that knows what to do with their properties, it would be Disney, specifically in this case Marvel and Star Wars. Not only have they created an amazing game in its own right with Marvel Rivals, but we also had an entire Marvel-themed Fortnite season in Chapter 5 Season 4's Absolute Doom, and we also have an upcoming month-long season of Star Wars. They chose to work on their own projects, all while maintaining a steady stream of new content for Fortnite. Now, I know that Disney has a closer relationship with Fortnite, but is Marvel Rivals a competitor to Fortnite? Other than competing for attention, it's a totally different game, and so was Multiversus. Warner Bros. Put all of their eggs into one basket, and it blew up in their face. Now, what's next for Warner Bros. And Fortnite now that they're once again best friends? There is a lot of hope that I have for them bringing iconic characters into Fortnite, and I have a few predictions. When I'm right, you can come back to this video and comment, "Wow, Oddly, you really know your stuff." I think that come October, when Fortnitemares rolls around, we will get either Beetlejuice or Jason from Friday the 13th. I mean, they both feel long overdue. Warner Bros. Owns Beetlejuice, and while they don't fully own Jason, they were involved in the reboot in 2009, and we did see him in Multiverses. And looking at who was on the roster for Multiverses, I can't help but be excited to see what comes next. It only took them losing $300 million to learn their lesson. And if you're curious about how we got to this point with the shocking amount of collaborations and where we might be headed, then click the video on screen now.